what do you get when you fuse the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim with The Legend of Zelda: The Skyward Sword? You get... I'm not using this video to change anybody's opinion of it. If you like the game, great. I don't. I'm glad people could find something in this game that they like. That is perfectly fine. But anybody who says this game is perfect, I gotta question you here. This game is far from perfect, okay? Like, there's plenty of problems with it. There's plenty of problems with every game. There is no perfect game. But to say that this game deserved Game of the Year the year it came out, like, what? What the fuck are you talking about? Anyways, we're going to get into it right now. So there's plenty of topics I want to cover. I'm mostly using what I think people should use to judge a video game on. That being the two broadest topics would be gameplay and story. The Zelda series has perfect gameplay and perfect story. They found a perfect combination of the two. It's 50-50%. Split even. Perfect. Every game has it. Even the first game, even though it was technically incapable of having a story, they still found a way to integrate the story into it. Like, you could understand just what the hell you were doing in the world of Hyrule, despite it being a very retro game. This game, on the other hand, doesn't do that. So, you know what? I'm done with the intro. This is the intro to the first Legend of Zelda game. Look at how creative this is. And just watch this. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said that the game implemented the story in its own way. It tells you everything you need to know about all the characters in the game, the main bad guy, and what your objective is in the world. Then, for some reason, it shows you what all the treasures are, but that's beside the point. This is Ocarina of Time's intro. Look at it. Look at that shit. You got 3D Link riding on 3D Epona on 3D Hyrule Field for the first time ever. That's fucking iconic. It's great. Goes on for a while too. I mean, they basically made it to show off the 3D capabilities. I'm pretty sure that's what they were going for, and it worked. Like, this is the kind of shit that you would remember if you grew up with this. This is the kind of shit that you would remember if you've seen this for the first time in your life. Majora's Mask intro it's unique, and by that I mean it's horrifying. You get the mask careening into your face right when you start it up. That's gonna get kids really interested in playing it. And not only that, you get to see this madman. What the fuck? So, anyways, it's mostly Link sitting around the town, and then at the end of it you see this. Yeah, you see Skull Kid being all creepy. What's he looking at? Oh shit. Imagine seeing that as a child. Good lord. The Wind Waker's intro is very effective in showing you just how happy and carefree the game is. It's cartoony now. It's definitely got a fun vibe to it. It shows off the colorful graphics, the music's upbeat and fun. I love it. It's a great intro. It just shows you the whole island that you start out on. You get to see Link for the first time in his cartoony glory. It's simple and pleasant. It's a hell of a lot more pleasant than the Majora's Mask one, but just as effective. And then you have my personal favorite Zelda game, Twilight Princess, and it's the best, at least in my opinion. It shows you just how badass this game is going to be. You get to see a fully grown, mature Link riding on Epona all across the field. You get the epic orchestra music. It's perfect, just like the game. It's serious, and it's the first Legend of Zelda game that's rated T for teen. Actually, I think it's still the only one that's rated T for teen. And it's the best, goddammit. Look at how great it looks. This is on the GameCube, by the way, and it still looks amazing. And at the end of it, you get to see Link as a wolf. He gives a good old howl, and I got goosebumps the first time I saw it. Amazing. I'll shill for this game all day. It's my favorite. I don't care what anybody says. It's the best. Skyward Sword's intro is definitely the worst by far. At least its intro. When you hit the start button, it brings up the menu, and you got the theme. So it's not terrible. It's the worst so far, though. Until you get to Breath of the Wild. What is this? You got still images of Link just standing around, generic art that you find pretty much anywhere. No music. Let this set the tone for the rest of the game. I think pretty much everyone knows this, but weapons break in this game. Your shields, bow, spears, swords, everything breaks in this game. So this is nothing new. Everybody knows it. This would be like the equivalent of if in Skyrim your swords would break after only a few hits to anything. Any attack you do pretty much damages your weapons. And you know what the biggest thing is? The Master Sword. The Sword of Evil's Bane. The legendary sword of the hero can run out of energy. It runs out of energy. So the music in Legend of Zelda is pretty damn epic, for the most part. There's something for everybody there. Music to me is important in video games. It can really set the tone. So let's take a look at Hyrule Field from Ocarina of Time. Now how about Hyrule Field from Twilight Princess? Now here's probably my favorite bit of music from Breath of the Wild. Is it good? The music in this game is pretty damn good. It's epic. It's a little quiet at times, like when you're running around out in the field. It's kind of just ambient noise, which is really, really lame. But when you're in Hyrule Castle, it plays that theme, and that's awesome. And the part at the finale, when you're about to fight big old blobby Ganon, and if you have all the divine beasts freed or whatever, the music that plays is epic. So if you ignore the garbage dialogue and just listen to the music, it's great.
And for the sting of my revenge.
This will be our final opportunity. We will not fail.
Let's go, little guy. Now, open up wide, Ganon!
100 years in the making. Hold on, princess. Our moment has arrived.
That whole scene would have been perfect if I actually gave a shit about any of the dialogue or any of those characters. I'll get to that later on. Also, Zora's Domain's got some really good music. Alright, so there's a big fuck off thumbs up for me to this game. Maybe the things are looking up. So what's next? Maybe this is gonna be good. There are 4 main villages in this game, each representing the 4 divine beasts that are in the game. All of them are optional, of course, but there's the Goron village. Pretty boring place, not really much to talk about. I've already mentioned the Zora's Domain, the music at least. The music's nice, but the place itself is literally just a bunch of paths and stairs. Very, very fucking boring. I'm going to be using that word a lot, I'm sure. Boring, because that's pretty much the main way to describe all of these villages in this game. I think I hate the Gerudo town the most out of all of them. Mainly because, so you have to cross-dress to enter, right? So, because the Gerudos, they don't like men. That makes sense, because that's how they were in the Ocarina of Time. The big difference in Ocarina of Time is that they would let you come and go in the valley after you've proven how competent you were. Even though you were a man, they respected you. And that's fine. Like, you earned their trust. In this, you saved them from their divine beast, even though it wasn't really doing anything. And they still don't let you inside. They throw you out unless you're cross-dressing. Like, what the actual fuck? The Rito village isn't even really worth talking about. All it is just a generic-looking village with bird people. That's it. So how about the rest of the world? How good is the rest of the world in this game? Well, it's big. It is a big, vast world. Like, there's no denying that. And it all looks nice. But there's nothing in it. Think about it this way. Think about a very big and vast ocean. Now, this ocean has no fish in it. Instead, all it has is scuba gear. And to get the scuba gear, you have to destroy your current scuba gear just to get that scuba gear. And if that's too hypothetical, then just think about a giant sandbox that it has nothing but sand in it. The sand's different shapes, like there's canyons and mountains, and there's some grass and trees in it. But other than that, it's just sand in a sandbox. That's pretty much this game's world. Yeah, there's monsters in the world, sure, but who gives a shit? This game's world is so barren, especially when you compare it to an open world game like the Elder Scrolls series or even Fallout, which Fallout is a wasteland, which is exactly what this fucking game should have been. If Ganon has taken over all of the land, this world looks pretty goddamn spotless. I'll get into that later. That's more of a story kind of thing, not gameplay. Bottom line is, the world in this game is boring. Every Zelda game has a memorable boss fight in some way, shape, or form. Boss fights aren't something that I would use to measure how good a video game is. Not every game needs to have boss fights in them, but the fact is, every Zelda game has a boss fight in it. So, I'm going to go ahead and compare every 3D Zelda boss. Let's just take a look at all their pictures, and I'll tell you their names, and we'll see just how creative all of them are. Starting with the Ocarina of Time. Gama, King Dodongo, Baronade, Phantom Ganon, Volvagia, Morpha, Bongo Bongo, the two forms of Twinrova, Ganondorf, and then Ganon. Now how about Majora's Mask? Adola, Got, Guileorg, Twin Mold, and then the three forms of Majora. Now how about Wind Waker? There's Goma, Kaldamos, Godon, the Helmarock King, Jalhala, Mulgura, Puppet Ganon, and finally Ganondorf. Now let's do Twilight Princess. Diababa, Phyrus, Morpheal, Stalord, Blizzetta, Armogama, Orgarok, Zant, Puppet Zelda, Ganon, and Ganondorf. And now the Skyward Sword. We have Girahim, who you actually fight a total of 3 times. Scaldura, Moldarok, Coloctus, Tentalus, Bilocite, and Demise. And finally, let's take a look at all the Breath of the Wild boss fights. Fireblight Ganon, Thunderblight Ganon, Waterblight Ganon, Windblight Ganon, Calamity Ganon, and Dark Beast Ganon. Here's a trivia question for you. Which blight is this one? How about this one? The only reason I know this one's the fire one is because the background. Same with this one. This one's the wind one because the background is clouds. Fucking lazy. The final boss fight in Ocarina of Time is a classic. Of course, you gotta fight Ganondorf. He's a dick. And he challenges you to a deadly game of volleyball. This trope would be used many times in 3D Zelda games where you gotta hit some kind of energy back at some evil person. That's used in the Wind Waker when you gotta fight Phantom Ganon. It's used in Twilight Princess when you gotta fight Puppet Zelda. I mean, it's fine. So anyways, you beat the shit out of Ganondorf. He tries to bring his castle down on top of you because he's so pissed that he let a 14-year-old beat him. So you escape with Zelda, and that's it, right? That's... Nope. Of course Ganon's not done yet. So obviously, this being the first time that Ganondorf's ever been in Zelda, this is also the first time you get to see Ganondorf use his Triforce of Power to transform into a big old pig monster. And of course it has to start storming, because that wouldn't be climactic enough if the weather was clear. Obviously, since Link lost the Master Sword for the first part of the fight, you have to use pretty much any of your other weapons to smack Ganondorf in his tail. Hit him so many times, and then you get the chance to go recover the Master Sword. To which you can go and shove it up Ganon's ass. So after you abuse Ganon's ass enough, he falls, allowing Zelda to shoot him with a Kamehameha. This allows Link to deliver the final blow with the Master Sword. The Majora's Mask final boss is different in many ways. The main way being it's one of the only bosses that isn't Ganondorf. So this boss fight can go one of two ways. Either easy as hell, or fairly difficult. If you got the Fierce Deity Mask, it's going to be a joke. Slap that fucker on, and just beat the shit out of him. So after his first form, he transforms into... whatever the fuck that is. So what do you gotta do? Just beat the shit out of him. And after that, he starts to transform again into whatever the fuck that is. So what do you gotta do? Just beat the fuck out of him. So that's pretty much all that one. He just disintegrates after that. So for Wind Waker, for it being a childish kind of cartoony sort of game, it's actually got a pretty mature theme about it, especially the ending. So the king makes the wish on the Triforces to flood Hyrule once and for all, and Ganon's pissed, so he tries to kill you. So you gotta team up with Zelda, who constantly shoots light arrows at him. So basically, you gotta keep him occupied while Zelda shoots him in the ass with light arrows. But eventually, he gets real pissed and he just bitch slaps her. What a dick. But anyways, towards the end of it, he starts blocking and dodging everything. So she says that she's gonna shoot your mirror shield with the light arrow, which somehow bounces off and hits him. Okay. Ganondorf from Twilight Princess is admittedly very easy, but that doesn't make it any less awesome. What other game can you clash with Ganondorf? Link is so goddamn badass in this game that he can overpower him. After he takes so much abuse, you're finally able to finish him off. For Skyward Sword, well, after the goddamn Wii Motion Controller stops being a pile of shit, you're finally able to fight Demise. Now, Demise, I think he's very tough. Of course, this might be because I'm on hero mode, and because the Wii Motion Controller's a pile of shit. But anyways, that's beside the point. Basically, you have to master parry in this game, otherwise he's going to kick your ass. You can parry every one of his punches and just counterattack you. It looks easy, but it's kind of not. Now, after he takes so much abuse, he falls, but then he gets back up, and of course he has to call in a thunderstorm, because it wouldn't be climactic enough if it wasn't storming. Now look at that, he actually follows your sword. I just think that's a neat little thing. So after you use your skyward sword to attack him, yeah. So you have to call down lightning with your sword, hit him with it, and then run in to beat the shit out of him. After he takes so much abuse, you're able to do a comical jump into the air and finish him off. By now, you already know that I'm about to take a big dump on the Breath of the Wild's final boss. But it's so much more than that. For one thing, this Dark Souls-looking ugly sumbitch spends most of his time crawling around on the damn wall. Oh my god. And it doesn't help how Link ragdolls every hit. And it also doesn't help that I went ahead and challenged this final boss right when I popped the thing in, and I totally forgot how to play, because it's been about a year since I played it. So I was struggling to remember how to even do anything, especially parry, which when you get him down to about like 25%, he does this, and the only way to hurt him is to parry one of his attacks. It was just a mess. Tedious as hell. So in the second and final phase, he turns into a giant pig blob, and all you have to do is shoot him with light arrows in these spots that glow. And I just want to say, the horse controls in this game, maybe it's just me, but they are god-awful. Felt like I was riding on a bar of soap. So at the end of it, all you have to do is use the updraft to go up and shoot him in the eye. Woo! How epic. Not really. Tedious and boring. Probably the most tedious boss fight I've ever had to play. Now, I don't mind long boss fights when they're done really well. Like, you can have a boss fight that has a lot of phases to it, as long as they're all interesting and they change up. They're not just some big blobby monster crawling around on the wall for half the fight, throwing shit at you. And then he eventually turns into a giant pig that all you have to do is just shoot him with arrows. That's not a good boss fight. So I've already compared all the other 3D Zelda games to Breath of the Wild's final boss. So now I'm going to take a different perspective and look at a game that has nothing to do with The Legend of Zelda and see how this final boss compares with the Breath of the Wild. This is Okami's final boss fight. Sure, it's a completely different game that plays more like Devil May Cry than anything, but it does everything that Breath of the Wild doesn't do in its final boss fight. And what's sad is Breath of the Wild is mostly just the final boss fight. Okami is a whole game and then the final boss fight. But anyways, during the final boss fight, you regain your powers that Yami, the final boss, steals from you. And you use your powers that you recover during the boss fight to deal more damage to him, thus causing him to give you more of your powers back. Now, this first phase of the boss fight is very easy. He's mostly just a big orb that kind of doesn't do a whole lot. The second phase of the fight is definitely more aggressive and has a lot more attacks, but it's pretty much the same kind of thing. You just beat him up till it gives you some of your powers back, and then you use your powers to continue to beat the hell out of him. The third phase of the boss fight changes things up dramatically. This motherfucker turns into a giant slot machine. Now, whatever he lands on, there's a different attack that he does. And you can use one of your attacks called the Power Slash to make the slot machine stop. And then he usually sends out some kind of attack that you can send back at him and deal more damage and get more of your powers back. So it's still kind of the same thing as the other phases, but it's definitely unique. The fourth form is definitely the hardest. He takes the shape of a big old robot, and he is very aggressive. He has a lot of attacks. He shoots all these missiles everywhere, but it still boils down to doing the same thing. You just beat the hell out of him, get your powers back, and just keep beating the hell out of him with your new powers. So after the fourth phase is done, Yami is destroyed, and that's it. I mean, that right there is enough to be better than Breath of the Wild. But, of course, he fakes his death. What a dick. And then he almost kills Amaterasu, destroys all the Celestials. So Amaterasu loses all her powers again. He turns the world dark, and for some reason he turns into a giant mechanical hand. God knows why he'd want to be a hand. But then everybody that you meet throughout the game starts praying to Amaterasu to give her back her powers. This is kind of like the whole thing with the champions in Breath of the Wild, but done about 1 billion times better. Mainly because you actually see these characters throughout the game, you actually care about these characters, and they haven't been dead for about 100 years. So after you get all their prayers, they go to Matarasu, and the Celestials are reborn, and they give all of her powers back. And you can proceed to just beat the shit out of Yami, because this phase is the easiest one so far. I mean, for good reason, too, because at this point, you're fully powered. So all that's left at this point is to just hand Yami his ass. Just hand it right to him. Now, as I said earlier, the only good part about this scene is the music. These characters mean nothing. They add nothing to the story. I don't know these people. I've only seen them when I went to the Divine Beast one time and saw some flashback that made no sense.
Let's go, little guy.
What would they be if I didn't find any other memory aside from the one that you get from going to the Divine Beast initially?
100 years.
You would barely know these characters.
Hold on, princess. Our moment has
And
arrived.
honestly, you don't even need to go get the Divine Beast. You can just head straight to Ganon. So you don't even have to see this scene. The only good scene in the entire game is optional. Before I talk about the story, let's review the gameplay. The title screen is garbage. Weapon breaking is garbage. The graphics and music are really good, especially the music. I love the music. The world is big, and there's not a damn thing in it. The bosses are generic and all look the same, culminating in a final boss that's not worth the payoff. Here's all the dungeons in the game. That's right, there are no dungeons. Instead, we just got these little trials. Awesome. The story in Zelda games are so in-depth that Nintendo had to create a timeline to determine how every game connects to one another. It starts with Skyward Sword and eventually leads into the Ocarina of Time. From Ocarina of Time, there's 3 different timelines that sprout. One where Link is defeated by Ganondorf, one where Link defeats Ganondorf and Zelda returns him back to his childhood, and one where it follows what happens when Zelda did send Link back to relive his childhood. There's no hero left to oppose Ganondorf when he returns. I wonder where Breath of the Wild fits on this timeline. Let's try to figure this out. So in this timeline, Link is defeated by Ganon. Ganon almost takes over Hyrule completely. Zelda's bloodline is nearly wiped out, but Ganon ultimately gets destroyed, as usual. And the games end with The Adventure of Link, which is the second game in the series. And in it, Zelda is saved by Link, and the resurrection of Ganon is prevented. So, there's no mention of that in Breath of the Wild, obviously. None of that fits anything that has to do with Breath of the Wild. But Ganon does take over Hyrule in it, so that there is a similarity there, I guess. In the middle timeline, Link is sent back in time after he defeats Ganondorf to live through his childhood. And in his time where he's a child, Zelda tells the king about Ganondorf, and Ganondorf is, quote, executed by being sent into the Twilight Realm, which he obviously escapes, and he takes over Hyrule, and Link destroys him once and for all. Until he gets resurrected in the Four Swords Adventure, where the 4 Links destroy Ganon again. So Ganondorf is dead again. No mention of any of this in the Breath of the Wild. Not a single drop of information from any of these games in the Breath of the Wild. So I highly doubt it takes place in this timeline either. Now, the final timeline is what happens after Zelda sends Link back. Now, obviously, since she sent Link back, there's no hero left. So when Ganon, of course, returns, there's nobody left to oppose him, which means that they have to use the Triforce as a last resort, and they flood the land of Hyrule, which leads into the Wind Waker. And at the end of the Wind Waker, Link stabs Ganondorf in the head with the Master Sword, and the 2 games that follow don't have Ganondorf in them at all, and have absolutely nothing to do with Hyrule. That being said, this timeline, I think, fits Breath of the Wild for mostly just one reason. The Rito are bird people who only exist in Wind Waker and Breath of the Wild. Now, the reason that they're in the Wind Waker is because they actually evolved from Zoras. So there were no Zora in the Wind Waker aside from one who is actually an ancestor of a Rito. And the reason that Zoras turned into Rito, apparently they couldn't survive in the Great Sea for some reason. And thus, that is why I believe the Wind Waker timeline is the timeline that the Breath of the Wild takes place on. Because there are Rito in the Breath of the Wild. Therefore, case closed. We found the timeline. Done. But wait a goddamn second. There's also Zora in the Breath of the Wild. How the hell are there Zora and Rito in the same game? What? How? I even looked through this stupid little book that they made for the Breath of the Wild, hoping to find some kind of an explanation as to why the hell there are Zora and Rito in the same damn universe. I didn't find anything, but that might be because me got small brain, me can't read well. So no, I can't find any information as to how the hell Breath of the Wild fits on any of these 3 timelines. So maybe Breath of the Wild is meant to start a 4th timeline. Maybe it's meant to branch off from somewhere else. I don't know. I really have no clue. But Nintendo have actually said where it takes place. Get this. Are you ready? The Breath of the Wild takes place at the end of all 3 of them. Now, I might be wrong, but there might be some reason as to how the hell that's possible. I still haven't found a reason. I don't know if Nintendo has a reason. The only reason I can think of right now, until I hear another definitive answer, is Nintendo is lazy and they couldn't figure out where the hell to fit this game on the next timeline, because this game has no story. For story progression, I'm going to be comparing Majora's Mask to the Breath of the Wild, mainly because I feel like they have the most in common. Majora's Mask has 4 major areas, and so does Breath of the Wild. And all 4 of those major areas have some kind of problem caused by the main antagonist. And I'm only going to be looking at mandatory things, not optional things like getting all the masks, or getting all the Korok seeds, or whatever the hell you do in Breath of the Wild. Alright, so first thing you do, you get to the clock tower, and you get your Ocarina of Time back. You enter the Southern Swamp, and learn the Sonata of Awakening to enter the Woodfall Temple. You complete the Woodfall Temple. You go to Snowhead and get the Goron's Mask. You learn the Goron's Lullaby. You enter Snowhead Temple. You complete Snowhead Temple. You find Epona, enter Great Bay, find all the Zora eggs, enter Great Bay Temple, complete Great Bay Temple, get the Mirror Shield, learn the Elegy of Emptiness, enter Stone Tower Temple, complete Stone Tower Temple, go back to the Clock Tower, call in the Giants, defeat Majora. Alright, so now how about we do Breath of the Wild story progression. Link wakes up after 100 years and starts playing the Nintendo Switch. Then he goes outside and looks at this big old empty world. Thank God for that title card. I wouldn't have known this was Zelda otherwise. You do these 4 trials for this old man. Man, I don't know who this old man is. He can't possibly be the king of Hyrule, can he? Man, who would have saw that coming? And after that, you can go fight Ganon. And that's the end of the game. This would be pretty much the same thing as if in Ocarina of Time, you woke up, went and talked to the Great Deku Tree, got his spiritual stone, and immediately were able to go to Hyrule and just fight Ganondorf. The characters, yes! That's the best part about Breath of the Wild! We got Link, who looks just about as excited as I am to be talking about this shit. Then we got Zelda, who comes across as a total bitch. And also, I cannot stand her voice. No offense to the voice actress. Then there's King Roam, who has no real backstory other than the fact that he's a king. Now for the optional characters. There's Ravioli, or Rivali, whatever the hell his name is. He's a prick. That's about all I know about him. Then there's Link's apparent girlfriend, Mifa, a fan favorite. Probably the worst written character in the game. Barbossa from Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm kidding, it's Urbosa. Barbossa is a much better character. I don't really know what her backstory is other than the fact that she's a Gerudo. And finally Darik, who I feel like is the only one that I actually could have liked if he had more of a backstory. Like, his friendship with Link felt believable, because it's easier to believe friendship than just outright love. And who the hell could forget the main bad guy? Calamity Ganon. Well, honestly, I just about did until I went and fought the first Blight. He named all the Blights after him just so you'd remember that he was even in the game. Anyway, that's pretty much all Breath of the Wild's characters. Let's talk about the Ocarina of Time's characters now. Hey, remember the kind of presence that Ganondorf had in the Ocarina of Time? You know, he was set up as the big bad pretty much from the very start. And then in the middle, he took over Hyrule. And ultimately, you had to go fight him. Yeah, I remember that. It's the kind of presence that Calamity Ganon sure as hell didn't have. There's Rayru, the Sage of Light, whose duty is to watch over Link's young body as he ages enough to wield the Master Sword. This sounds a lot creepier now that I'm saying it out loud. Nabooru, the Sage of Spirit. She was a Gerudo woman who was once loyal to Ganondorf, but now she thinks that he's an asshole. And she would be right. Impa, the Sage of Shadow. She's a Sheikah who serves as Zelda's bodyguard. Saria, the Sage of the Forest, and Link's childhood friend who grew up in Kokairi Forest with him, and she's the only one who didn't treat him like garbage. Darunia, the Fire Sage and leader of the Gorons on top Death Mountain, declared Link his sworn brother when he cleared out the Dongo Cavern. Whatever the hell a sworn brother is. Rudo, the Water Sage and Princess of the Zoras. She was once a stuck-up bitch, but after Link saved her from a giant jellyfish, she wanted to marry him. How romantic. And of course there's Zelda, the leader of the Sages and Princess of Hyrule. She helps Link out on his journey by posing as a guy named Sheik, and also to elude Ganondorf. Now that is a diverse and interesting cast of characters. It's a hell of a lot better than Breath of the Wild's 4 dead characters and Princess Zelda, who's barely in it. As I mentioned earlier, there's 4 areas in Majora's Mask and Breath of the Wild. These 4 areas have their own kind of problems that are caused by the big bad of the game. The water in the swamp is completely poisonous, and the Deku Princess was kidnapped and locked inside the temple. The Wind Divine Beast pretty much just shoots cannons at any Rito that fly too close to it. So don't fly near the damn thing! On Snowhead, the Goron are suffering from a never-ending blizzard. The Thunder Divine Beast is causing a sandstorm. Nowhere near the Gerudo village. Great Bay is probably suffering the least, but there are Zora that lost their eggs. That was mostly because pirates, though. Pretty much all that happens in Great Bay is there's like a big old whirlpool around Great Bay Temple. The Fire Divine Beast is kicking up a fuss on the side of a volcano, which causes it to erupt and throw rocks down on Gorons. Gorons eat rocks. Ikana Canyon is filled to the brim with a bunch of spooky ghosts and spirits that won't rest because Skull Kid's a dick. Also, he turns people into mummies. Without a doubt, the water divine beast hits the Zora the hardest. It makes it rain constantly on them. You know, Zora, the fish people, live underwater, breathe underwater. Yep, it rains constantly on them. Damn, that must be a big problem for them. Man, they should just use a metal drying pan. So, the story is just as bad. No, it's worse than the gameplay. This game was released in 2017, and I played it for the first time in 2019, after I heard nothing but 2 years of praise for it. It won Game of the Year in 2017, not that that really means anything. And it's almost got like a perfect score on everything that gives us a score for a video game. I guarantee if you were to take out any imagery that resembles Zelda, like the Triforce symbols, rename all the characters, you wouldn't know that this was a Zelda game. All it would take is just changing certain symbols and renaming characters, and this game would have nothing to do with the Zelda series. If this is your favorite Zelda game, good for you. I'm glad you could find something in it that I definitely could not enjoy. I don't know how you think it's a good Zelda game, but hey, to each their own. If this is your favorite game of all time, I strongly disagree with you, but hey, again, that's perfectly fine. You can have your own opinion. I just won't ever understand the amount of praise this game got by, like, everything that rates video games and the video game awards or whatever the hell they're called anymore. Everything was saying how perfect and amazing this game was. I don't get it. There's two other games that I can think of that came out in 2017. Both of them are far superior to this pile. One of them being Persona 5, which has nothing to do gameplay-wise with Legend of Zelda, but its gameplay is far superior, and its storytelling is infinitely superior to whatever the hell Nintendo threw together to make this game's story. The other game that I feel is similar to Breath of the Wild, more so than Persona 5, but just as good as Persona 5, is Nier Automata. There's 3 main characters in Nier Automata. All 3 of them are androids, and all 3 of them are better than every single character in Breath of the Wild. One of the lines that a character says is, "Emotions are prohibited." Meanwhile, these characters show far more emotion than any of those 4 dead champions. The story is kind of insane, honestly. Very confusing, but it's actually really damn good if you pay close attention to it. I mean, it goes without saying, it's a damn sight better than Breath of the Wild's. And the main bad guys are a hell of a lot more effective than big old Blobby Ganon. The combat is pretty much as close as you're going to get to an RPG version of Devil May Cry. And the best part about it is, there's no goddamn breakable weapons. The action is fast-paced, there's a lot of ways to do combat, no breakable weapons, it's fun to explore the world. The world itself actually seems like it's been in ruins, and it's like a post-apocalyptic sort of thing, which is exactly what the fuck Breath of the Wild was supposed to be doing. But no, all it is Ganondorf's taking over Hyrule. But every place is fine. Aside from the Zoras, they're getting rained on. Oh god, not the fucking rain. In conclusion, thank God. Thank God it's all over. It was hell trying to play this game just to get more footage for it. I sure as hell wasn't going to start a new game and play it all through again. It was torturous the first time I did it. There's no way in hell that I was going to do it again. But it's over. Thank God. And listen, if you like this game, great. That's perfectly fine. I'm glad that there's a lot of people that could find pleasure in a game that I despise wholeheartedly. I'm glad that people could find some enjoyment in the game that I couldn't. That's perfectly fine. But there's a Breath of the Wild 2 on the way. Breath of the Wild 2. I want you to think about it. Even if you're not a Zelda fan, you could probably tell that there's not a whole lot of Zelda games that have a 2 in its title. I'm going to go ahead and spoil this for you right now. All the main games, not counting any like sequels or spin-offs or weird games like that, there's only one game that has a goddamn 2 at the end. And that's Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, the second game in the series. So Nintendo's just went completely lazy, and they aren't even giving games a new subtitle anymore. They're just continuing straight off Breath of the Wild's garbage story to make another garbage story that's paper thin. I got a subtitle for you, Nintendo. Listen to this, you sons of bitches. Breath of the Wild 2, we ain't got no story boogaloo.